everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're tuning in today because, well, we've got a pretty monumental task ahead of us, and honestly, it's going to be a fantastic journey. Today, we're exploring a really powerful contrast between two completely different narrative arcs: the devastating, uncontrollable downward spiral of tragedy and the incredibly uplifting upward climb of triumph. If you've ever struggled to keep the heavy, complicated themes of Shakespeare and Dickens straight in your head, you are in the exact right place. Before we even get into the specific texts, I really want you to chew on this question for a second. Does uncontrolled ambition just always lead to destruction? Or, on the flip side, can sheer hard work actually overcome any hardship? It's basically the ultimate showdown of human nature. On one side, we have William Shakespeare's fatalistic tragedies, where kings and generals orchestrate their own spectacular downfalls. And on the other side, we have Charles Dickens' incredibly resilient narratives, where vulnerable orphans face the absolute worst of society and somehow climb their way to the top. Keep this stark contrast in mind as we move forward. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for the explainer today. First up, power, pride, and tragedy. Then, hardship, hope, and happiness. After that, comparing the classics, and we'll wrap it all up with the ultimate cheat sheet. Let's get started. Section 1. Power, Pride, and Tragedy. Let's look at Shakespeare's downward spirals. So in this first part of our explainer, we're zooming in on three classic cautionary tales from William Shakespeare: King Lear, Julius Caesar, and Macbeth. Notice that rhythm? It's the classic rule of three. These three plays give us an absolute masterclass in how quickly things can unravel when power goes straight to someone's head. We are about to explore some extremely dark themes here: ruthless politics, immense power grabs, and deep family betrayals. So buckle up, because let me tell you, none of these stories have a happy ending. Let's kick things off with King Lear. This is a story literally driven by pride, arrogance, and some serious family betrayal. Lear is this aging king of Britain who makes, well, a massive, fateful mistake. He decides to divide his kingdom among his three daughters, but he bases their inheritance entirely on how much they verbally profess their love for him. His two elder daughters, Goneril and Regan, shower him with completely false flattery. They just tell him exactly what his ego wants to hear. But his youngest daughter, Cordelia, she speaks honestly, and Lear's blinding pride simply cannot handle her sincerity. He gets terribly angry, disowns the honest Cordelia, and hands all his power over to the two manipulative sisters. It's a textbook example of poor judgment, and a stark reminder that absolute power often acts as a blindfold to the truth. You can basically track Lear's tragic downward spiral in three major steps. Step 1, that false flattery wins the kingdom. But the exact moment Goneril and Regan get power, they drop the act entirely. They mistreat their father horribly, which leads directly to Step 2, Lear's complete loss of sanity. He literally wanders out into a raging storm, which is just a perfect metaphor for his inner turmoil. By the time we reach Step 3, Lear finally realizes his terrible mistake and reconciles with Cordelia. But this is Shakespearean tragedy, folks. Realizations almost always come too late. Cordelia is executed, and Lear himself actually dies of pure, unbearable grief. The play closes on a note of widespread death and suffering, all triggered by one man's arrogant pride. Now, what's really interesting here is contrasting two entirely different flavors of fatal ambition. With Julius Caesar, we're looking at this external, political ambition that threatens an entire system of government, the Roman Republic. But with Macbeth, we shift inward. We're looking at supernatural tyranny and the crushing weight of deeply personal guilt. Both paths absolutely lead to destruction, but the psychological journeys getting there are entirely distinct. Let's unpack Julius Caesar first. Honestly, this one plays out like a fast-moving political thriller. Caesar is this incredibly powerful leader, and his growing influence deeply, deeply alarms the Roman senators. His close friend Brutus genuinely believes Caesar's ambition is going to destroy the Republic, so he joins a conspiracy led by Cassius to assassinate him. They truly think they're acting as patriots. But immediately after the murder, Mark Antony delivers an absolutely brilliant, manipulative speech that completely turns the Roman citizens against the conspirators. Instead of saving the Republic, Brutus and Cassius plunge Rome into a bloody civil war. They're ultimately defeated, and both commit suicide, finally realizing the tragic, unintended consequences of their political violence. Moving over to Macbeth, man, the tragedy gets even darker. Macbeth starts out as this brave, highly respected Scottish general. But then he encounters three witches who prophesy that he's going to be king. That tiny spark of ambition is fanned into a roaring flame by his wife, Lady Macbeth. Together, they murder the sitting monarch, King Duncan, just so Macbeth can seize the throne. But taking power through murder comes at a terrifying cost. In a brilliant early exploration of psychological paranoia, guilt totally consumes them. Macbeth becomes a paranoid tyrant, committing more and more murders just to protect his crown, while Lady Macbeth literally goes mad from the guilt and dies. In the end, Macbeth is killed by a rival nobleman named Macduff, and a rightful leader named Malcolm has to step in to restore the shattered order of Scotland. Once again, uncontrolled ambition destroys everything it touches. Section 2, Hardship, Hope, and Happiness. Time for Dickens' upward climbs. All right, it is time to pivot our narrative arc. We're leaving behind the heavy, self-inflicted downfalls of kings and generals and jumping into the incredibly resilient tales of Charles Dickens. Tracing David Copperfield's growth perfectly illustrates this upward climb. At point 1, his childhood, David faces unimaginable cruelty from his abusive stepfather, Mr. Murdstone, especially right after his biological father dies. Point 2 drops him even lower into harsh, grinding labor in a factory as a young boy. But watch the turn at point 3. Through sheer determination, seeking out an education, and leaning on the support of truly loyal friends, David begins his ascent. By point 4, his adulthood, he has transformed himself into a highly successful writer who has found genuine happiness and maturity. It's just an incredible trajectory. So the big themes driving David's story are personal growth, perseverance, navigating those super rigid structures of social class, and, above all else, the vital importance of kindness. Unlike Shakespeare's tragic heroes who literally bring suffering upon themselves, David faces unearned suffering. And this is actually a theme Dickens famously pulled directly from his own traumatic childhood working in a bootblacking factory. David didn't ask to be an orphan or to be sent to work. Yet this novel brilliantly illustrates how individual hard work, personal responsibility, and keeping a kind heart can actually overcome devastating circumstances. Dickens continues this upward trajectory with the incredibly intense journey of Oliver Twist. We kick things off in the utterly miserable, starving conditions of a 19th century workhouse. I mean, we all know the famous moment where young, innocent Oliver actually dares to ask for more food. Because of that, he's punished and eventually escapes to the gritty streets of London, only to fall straight into the hands of a criminal gang run by the notorious Fagin, who trains kids to be thieves. It looks incredibly bleak for him, but eventually, against all odds, his true, respectable identity is discovered and he's rescued, ending his journey by finally finding a safe, loving home. And this brings us to the real core takeaway of the novel, Oliver's innocence. We're talking about his ability to remain pure, kind-hearted, and entirely good despite living amidst severe poverty, brutal social injustice, and literally being surrounded by a gang of criminals. Oliver is exposed to the absolute worst of society, yet he never gets corrupted by it. He stands as this fascinating counter-narrative to those Shakespearean heroes we just discussed. Where Macbeth and Caesar let ambition rot them from the inside out, Oliver's inner goodness remains entirely untouchable, acting like a shield that eventually guides him to salvation. Section 3. Comparing the classics. Let's look at tragedies versus triumphs. Now that we've walked through these narratives individually, it's time to put the data side by side to really lock in these differences. When we look at the main themes and the endings together, a crystal clear pattern emerges. Those top 3 works, King Lear, Julius Caesar, Macbeth, they're all driven by themes of pride, betrayal, and massive unchecked ambition, and every single one results in a tragic ending. But moving down to Davidcopperfield and Oliver Twist, they're anchored by themes of growth, perseverance, and untainted innocence. And they both result in happy, triumphant endings. It's a stark, undeniable line dividing the self-destructive cower of pride from the resilient power of hope. Section 4. The ultimate cheat sheet. Let's get into some one-sentence themes perfect for exams. All right, if you need to prep for a test or honestly just want to sound really smart at your next book club, let's run through these rapid fire. Number 1, King Lear teaches us that pride and poor judgment inevitably lead to deep suffering. Number 2, Julius Caesar proves that political ambition and betrayal often bring complete destruction. Number 3, Macbeth shows that uncontrolled ambition will absolutely destroy both the individual and the society around them. Now switching over to the triumphs, number 4, Davidcopperfield is the ultimate proof that hard work and resilience can help anyone overcome life's steepest difficulties. And number 5, Oliver Twist reminds us that true innocence and goodness can survive and even thrive in a cruel and unjust world. These 5 sentences right here, they're the absolute core lessons distilled directly from thousands of pages of classic text. Which brings us to our final takeaway and a question I really want to leave you pondering today. In the end, are our lives shaped by unavoidable fate or the choices we make? When we look at Macbeth listening to prophecies, or David choosing to work hard despite his intense poverty, we are constantly brushing up against this massive debate between fate and free will. Think about the choices the characters we reviewed today made, and think about how they reflect our own lives. Literature is just a mirror, after all. Keep asking these big questions and definitely keep exploring these incredible texts. Thanks for learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.